And the message is, I was in gravity and I wanted something. I wanted a movie or a simulation, and one didn't exist. And that's my feedback. I press a button that fast. Let me do that again so you get a sense of it. Let's say I wanted to have an alternative language, and I wanted it to be French, right, about gravity. I send it off, it's gone. Who's ever responsible for developing this has got a message. Now, they don't have to respond to it, but as hundreds of people start to use this kind of stuff, they start to get input coming back that's guiding how they optimize and unfold what it is they're producing so that it actually fits the real needs of people that are using it. That happens representationally as well. So let's say that I'm in at this level, and I say there wasn't an alternative language that I wanted, but I'm going to create one and type this whole thing in French. By going into the publish mode, then they send the French alternative representation of this back to the network and connect it up in the structure of exactly where they were. Or likewise, let's say with respect to gravity, they can send notes, messaging, that uses the same basic rubric that I've been describing, the way that this LearnerScope uses. So to send notes that would, when somebody would read the notes, would pull them right back to the same space that the learner who created the note was when they created the note, so that it kind of syncs the context up between learners that are collaborating. Here in the back is kind of what I was talking about. Remember we said on gravity we wanted French? These are the references that we've looked at. These are the representations we've looked at. This is the mail. This is the publications in. These are the various. This is a kind of a snapshot view of a crude view of what feeds the teacher interface.
Sus genes pueden influenciar cómo se siente acerca del trabajo.
So I want to see English-Spanish side by side. The same basic rubric of navigation, if you will, is relevant to dealing with alternate representations, different types of references. I'll come back to this in a minute. Let's keep the lights back on. Different languages. There are some sleepers out there, so I wanted to turn the lights on for a minute. In other words, the system has the qualities what we were talking about before, and by basically becoming familiar with 2 or 3 controls, almost joystick-like, a learner can fly into different types of representations that might be available for the space they're in. Fly through different types of reference material that's available to support wherever they were uncertain or curious. Articulate immediately that something that they had a need that the system couldn't meet, so that the articulation of that need would inform the system in a way that would help that material unfold to meet them later. That everything that they're doing is flowing off their backside to become statistically and visually summarized for teachers, for people to start to learn into. It's like the microscope with which the system can learn about what are the learning patterns of people in different areas of the curriculum at a resolution level never before even tried. There's a lot more I could talk about the learner interface. I mentioned the ability to kind of have the highlighters. That collector's case, it also has a command key that allows you to slide down and pick which collector case you want. Then if you turn it on, it becomes a highlighter, and you just take whatever you want, and it just falls over your back into the collector case.
Did you say that the teacher interface is developed?
No, it's much less developed. We have teachers kind of collaborating with us on what that's going to look like. Okay, only part of it deals with feedback summary. We're developing other kinds of paper-based feedback gathering models and processes through which the teacher will be able to take information that's flowing through the class, information that's coming through technology, and visualize the class through visualizations in the computer that will allow them to have a better sense of what's going on at a subject matter level, what's going on with individual students, what's going on over different timescapes. I mean, teachers need a lens to visualize what's going on that's not immediately apprehendable or perceivable to their senses, just like we do in other environments. Let me see. There's an authoring system that talks about how it is we can generate these materials in the beginning. In other words, when somebody wanted to make a professional course this way, it had video, multimedia, sound, text components, image components, that we could spend some time on. There's the way in which the information's organized and molecularized so as to make it efficient for CD-ROMs and slow-speed networks, which we could spend some time on. There's a process called attribute-oriented processing, which we could spend some time on, which is how is it that the learner interface starts to optimize the presentation of resources available to a learner so that it really fits the learner. Let's do this one more time. This is the compass setting area. Here the learner can say, I'm looking for, I don't want to slow the machine down, so I want to stay kind of low on the, I want to be as interactive as I can with text. I want it to be conductive. I want it to be elaborate. And I want the scope of my inquiries to be pretty mainstream with respect to the context that I'm in. Whenever I click on somebody's name that is a biography, automatically dump it for me. And whenever I ask for alternative languages, I'm working in Spanish. Adjust the sound, adjust the typeface as we did earlier. Go right back. It's kind of like trim tabs on an airplane. And this corresponds, I'm not going to go into it in any great length, this is part of the deck of the authoring system, where every time an author makes something, they can make attributions. Well, this is primarily text. There's a little bit of images. There's no sound components. It's not interactive. The content involved in this module is actual. It's not links. The content density is concise. The context scope is very tight. It's very difficult, and it's not very significant. And what they've done is assemble an attribute word, a real small mathematical word that's tagged to whatever the content was that they created. And that attribute word is part of how the learner interface tunes the matchup, because the learner interface has these attribute match controls as well. You.
Interject something here, because what occurs to me as an educational psychologist and curriculum designer is that in the past we've just thrown the way we teach even disability and handicapped people. We don't know a great deal yet about how they learn in depth. And to me, this would teach us a whole new set of knowledge about how people learn, even though they do have different handicapping and learning styles, because we're still in the infant stage of understanding that. This would give us feedback from people who actually have those handicaps.
How exactly would you collect that at these, unless there's some central linkage?
You would have a central linkage, I would see in a school district level, or if you were, say, teaching something to adult populations who are illiterate, at the community college system, for instance, in North Carolina is responsible for that. And you have a central bank of data collection on